Welcome to Ulterior Moto, your home for riders, reviews, and how-tos. Today, it's going to be a quick one. We are going to pull the front wheel off of this motorcycle. This is a GSXR 600 from 2005. The 750 is identical. Most bikes are basically going to be this exact setup as far as the procedure goes. Your size of tools may vary, but there are a few things you're going to need to do this. For one, you're going to have to get your front wheel off the ground, and you're going to have to make sure that your bike is stable. Personally, I have a rear stand. I got the front stand. That's the best way to go in my opinion. Then you're going to need to get those tools I mentioned. So starting with this tool for your axle. This varies depending on what bike you have. I just got this off eBay. It's basically just a really long nut, and it fits into the end of the axle. And just a little tip, I write the torque settings that I need for when I go to put this back on the tool. That way I don't have to look it up each and every time. In this case, 100 Newton meters, which is very tight. You'll need a socket to accompany that. In this case, it is a 24 millimeter. I always keep these together so I don't have to go hunting for them. A breaker bar, because like I said, 100 Newton meters is a fair bit of torque. You don't want to take the axle off with a torque wrench. That's just excess wear and tear on your torque wrench that you don't need. Use a breaker bar for that. You will need a wrench for your pinch bolts, which are on the front of each axle. You'll need a wrench for your brake calipers. These will need to come off before we can get the wheel off. They are so close together to one another, just pulling the axle wouldn't allow you clearance to get the wheel off otherwise. And then when you go to reinstall, you will need your torque wrench. And lastly, what you want to have here, a couple pieces of wire, each about 2 feet in length, and I'll show you why that's necessary. This is just ordinary baling wire, but these are going to hold the calipers so that the brake cables aren't holding them all on their own, okay? So that'll take the stress off of those. So, that said, let's get started. So it's a bit easier if you start with the wires, get them in position first before you remove the caliper. So find a convenient place. On this bike, I have some holes where the radiator mounts, and I'm going to use those. Just give my wire a little twist up there. That'll do it. And then when I pull this off, I'll just slide the wire through the bolt hole. So I'm ready to go on that end. All right, so just sliding it through the bolt hole there, taking the slack off of the brake lines themselves. So as you can see, 2 feet is more than enough. All right, there we go. So we'll repeat this procedure on the other side. The next thing we need to address is the pinch bolts, but not all of them at once. You want to get the side that the tool goes into first. We'll loosen those. They're not super tight, but on this it calls for about 23 Newton meters, I believe, maybe 26, somewhere around there. On this particular bike, these are just a 10 millimeter screw. There we go. Now you don't need to take these all the way out, just loosen them up. As you can see, there's a slot in the bottom of the fork there, and basically, as the name implies, this is just pinching that slot together to hold on to the axle. All right, and put our tool in there, get it in as far as you can. And then I find it helpful to get it at an angle where you get the most leverage and also hold on to the wheel so you're not just twisting it. All right, there we go. And one thing you want to check is the other side. Make sure that it's just not simply spinning the axle around, or the nut on the other side rather. If that's the case, then it means that your pinch bolts on the other side are too loose, and you'll need to tighten those up. Okay. Let's see, is this hand tight or hand loose? Are there yet? Yeah, there we go. All right, so the threads on this are pretty long. It'll take a moment. You can see the axle starting to come out. As you'll note, I'm supporting the wheel here so it doesn't fall down. All right, so when you notice that it's not really coming out anymore, it's basically just friction holding it in at this point. Yeah, that's where we are at this point. Yeah, so now I can just pull that out. As I mentioned, I'm holding on to the wheel because it will just fall out otherwise. Front stand has that nice little area to put them. And now it is off. So one of the things about this front stand in particular, and this tire profile that I have, is that it doesn't want to come out without removing the front fender as well. So that's pretty basic. I don't think you need me to show you how to do that. 2 bolts on each side. And then there's one in the back there. And that's it. Front tire will be removed. Now we've got our front wheel off of our bike. This helps us do a number of things. For one, if you need to get a new front tire, this will save you some money. You don't have to take the whole bike in. Replacing your brake pads or inspecting them, I'm going to take that opportunity now and probably clean those up. If you're doing some sort of fork maintenance, which is the next thing I'm doing, and the reason I'm pulling this off right now, that's necessary. It's basic and can save you a lot of money and save you a little bit of time, and there you have it. So when you do go to reassemble it, everything is in reverse order, but double check, make sure that your rotation is correct. There's an arrow on every tire that'll tell you the direction of rotation. If you're a car guy, the motorcycle tires might seem a little backwards to you, especially when it comes to the front as far as the direction of the tread. So do take a look at those direction arrows. They'll help you out. All right, thanks for coming. Ride smart.